Arriaga. Today we'll go over chapter 4 from John Maxwell's book on the 15 invaluable laws of growth. So this is chapter 4, the law of reflection. As a reminder, I use the acronym SOAP, SOAP, and so S stands for either what you're studying, the section or the statement or whatever somebody said to you. In this case, we're studying chapter 4. The O is for observations. So, what are between 1 and 3 observations that you took away from the material? How did it speak to you, uniquely to you? And so, the observations can be direct or indirect. Direct meaning that me reading this section, this paragraph, this is what it meant to me, this is my interpretation. Or indirect meaning that as a result of what I read, it reminded me of something else. It brought something else to mind, or as a result of something that someone said during our discussion. A is application. So this is the intent here is to get you to reinforce this so it's goes from short-term learning to long-term learning. So ask yourself, can I apply this within the next 24 to 48 hours? And that'll be very helpful in order for you to retain the material longer. And then there's P, which is passing it forward. Can you pass this information on to somebody else? Ask yourself, who do I know that needs to hear this too? Who can benefit from the material? So we're going to look at the material. So if you have the PDF, the chapter starts on page 67, Law Reflection. And so here's a quote by Peter Drucker, which says, "Follow effective action with quiet reflection. From the quiet reflection will come even more effective action." One thing in my personal professional life I've noticed is that we tend to evaluate things that don't go well. I've learned over time is that you also want to pay particular attention to things that are going well so you can replicate them. Don't assume that they will naturally occur if you get a promotion, if you leave your organization, if you switch departments. If you want to replicate your success steps, the things that you've done in the past, you want to pay attention to looking, listening, reflecting on those things that are also going well. My first observation is on page 70. And so let me just scroll down here. And let's see. There. Right. So what I wrote here is, I've highlighted a number of areas above. You can see experience is the teacher of all. Evaluated experience is really what matters. So it's not just experience. You have to evaluate your experience. And then he says, people have innumerable experiences every day, and many learn nothing from them because they never take the time to pause and reflect. That is why it is so important to pause and let understanding catch up with us. So I wrote, I know. So I know versus I understand is insight and successful application of the lesson. So oftentimes when you speak to someone or you share something with someone, it might be a nugget of wisdom, you will hear a lot of people say, I know that. Oh, I already know that. Oh yeah, I know. There is a huge difference between I know it and I understand it. So the way I look at it is, I know it is more of your conscious mind. You are aware of the information. I understand it is more of a subconscious mind where you are applying it. You have a habit. You're doing something with that information. So I like to say, the question that I ask when people say, even if it might be rhetorical, when people say I know it, is, yeah, you may already know it, but are you doing it? And if you're doing it, are you doing it successfully? And if you're doing it successfully, do your measurable results reflect that you're doing it successfully? So it might be, for example, we all know how to lose excess weight. You know that. Exercise and change your diet. But are you doing it? Or you might have a person who understands the concept of having a dog. Yes, I have a dog. I know what a dog is. I know. But there is a huge difference between a person who actually has a dog or has had a dog versus the person who hasn't had a dog. A person who has a dog has a different level of awareness, different level of understanding. He or she knows that there's a lot of commitment, there's a schedule, there's a routine, there's individual personalities. It's they know what a bark or a whining means. They know all these things. So there's a huge difference between that person knowing what a dog is versus the person who understands what a dog is. So I hope that's kind of a good example, clear example in terms of saying I know is not enough. You have to understand, and we know that a person understands them because, as the good book says, you shall know them by their fruits. All you have to do is look at the results, and then you know whether that person knows or understands. So that's observation number one. Observation number two is on the next page, and what I did was I combined both my second and third observation together. So again, reading the sections above, you see that he says, I encourage people to identify or create a thinking place. Did I do that because there is some magic in having a designated place to pause and think? No, the answer is no. No, he did it because if you go to the trouble to create a place to pause and think, and you schedule the time to go there, you will probably actually use it and you will benefit from it. So what are my observations? What I wrote is that I grow more and more by adding more and more time vision casting. So I put more time into vision casting and meditating. Now, when I'm meditating, I don't necessarily mean sitting down in a yoga position with my eyes closed, fingers in this, or my hands in this gesture, and humming along. That's not what I mean. You can do that, but that's not what I'm doing. I am sitting down, I'm closing my eyes, and it's what I call memorizing my future. I'm going out to the future, and I'm looking at what the future Rich Arriaga looks like. What is it that he wants to be? What does he want to do? What does he want to have? And what does he want to give? Who does he want to give to? What are the proportions, the amounts that he wants to give to the world, his impact on the world? So what I do is I set clear intentions, and it's not just positive thinking, it's clear intentions with an elevated emotion. Love, joy, peace, happiness, those positive, good emotions. And I reflect on open-ended questions. So what is the best version of myself is an example of an open-ended question. How would that person behave? How would that person handle the situation? What is the wisest version of this person? What else can I do to add value? Those are the open-ended questions that I ask because I'm looking in terms of having an impact on humanity, leaving a legacy, working with ensuring that I'm conscious of equity, etc. So what you're doing when you're asking those open-ended questions, we all know we have a brain, and the frontal brain is your CEO. This is the one who's making those executive decisions. So I'm asking questions that activates the CEO, the frontal cortex, who then starts spanning my brain and looking for examples, looking for answers to those questions. It's kind of using a logic to just see what's common between these things. How can I answer the question that's being presented to it? In terms of, I do have a favorite chair, and I have a headset and some eye covers that I use like when you travel on an airplane. And I sit there and I might put some classical music, or I just put some just instrumental music that allows me to go deep inside, just to focus and ask these questions and think and ponder. That's my focus time. And I literally schedule this every day. So even on my work calendar, I'll take out at least 2 or 3 30-minute sessions, and I just sit down and think about problem solving, thinking about where do I want to go next, what's the next best thing to do, etc. I keep getting better at this, and I can do this in many places. So I get to the point where I'm conditioning and training myself where I can actually do walking meditation. So I'm not meditating with my eyes closed as I'm outside and I'm enjoying nature. I'm not just seeing what's there, I'm seeing what can be there. I'm seeing beyond the physical senses. I'm imagining a better version, a better vision, a better world, etc. So what I wrote finally is I have enormous notes that I review over and over, and I forgive myself and learn versus beat myself up and regret or feel guilt. So we all have this tape that's playing in our mind, is MP3 file that reminds of all your failures and all your mistakes. You can't just turn that off. And the way that I've learned to silence that is to replace it with something that's more affirming, more positive. And so as my level of awareness increases, almost everything I believe changes. So we've all heard is the more that you learn, the more you become aware of how truly ignorant you have been. And ignorant is not stupidity. Ignorant simply means lack of knowledge. So the more you become aware, the more you speak to people, the more you create, the more you collaborate, the more you grow, and the more you realize that I don't have a full picture. And you're never going to have a full picture. You will have a fuller picture, but you will always have these huge blind spots. And that's why it is important to work with, to collaborate, to create with other people, as opposed to competing with them. Competing is sort of a dumb game unless you're in sports or in an environment where it's really required. But when you're working in and for the same organization, you want to avoid competing. You rather collaborate and create with other people. So those are my takeaways from this chapter. Now I would encourage you to each go around, share your 1, 2, or 3 observations based on either what I've said, what the next person says, or from your readings. I hope this has been helpful.